I've had two does that kidded, and they have like not diarrhea, but just their poop clumps. And I've read that that might be normal for a really brief time, but this has gone like 2 or 3 weeks, but it is resolving on its own. It's just taking a while. Do you have thoughts on that? Or is that even something I should pay attention to?
Two most common reasons for their poop to be clumpy and stick together rather than nice pebbles would be if they are out on fresh spring grass and they're not used to that. So they're consuming a lot more moisture than what they're used to. And then the other one would be that you see that sometimes when a barber pole worm gets a little high. If that's all it is, it's not a big deal, but I would definitely be keeping a close watch on their eyelids. Since it's a blood sucking worm, they can go from fine to really bad shape really fast. I'd probably be checking their eyelids like every other day, as long as their poops are clumpy, and also their body condition, make sure their body condition is good. The other thing is to make sure they're getting enough protein, because if they aren't getting enough protein, then they can't handle the worms as well as they otherwise could. That's one of the reasons you want to feed them alfalfa, is for the protein and also the calcium. So if they're getting 50 to 100% of their hay alfalfa. And then for grain, it should be 1 pound of 16% protein goat feed for every 3 pounds of milk they're producing. So, and if they're raising kids, you can estimate how much milk they're producing based on how many kids they have. And if the kids are getting weight, like by the time the kids are 2, 3 weeks old, the dough needs to be getting close to a quart a day for each kid. So did you say triplets?
Well, one of my does had twins and the other has triplets. The first one, I kind of panicked and I gave her Safeguard. She was the one that was so delicate last year that had the quadruplets that 3 were dead. And she's been a project trying to get her healthy and everything smooth. Everything has gone very smoothly with her this year, probably due to her nutrition being a lot better this year, because I just got her last year when she was a month and a half before delivery. And so I've had her for a full year now, and she's had no problem. She's been a rock star. She had a very easy kidding, but she did have that clumpy poop. And I thought, okay, that might be normal for maybe a week while everything's settling back down. But it went on beyond that. So I gave her a dose of Safeguard and thought, well, if it's worms, maybe that'll fix it. But it kept on for about another week and a half, and now it's pretty much resolved. But my other doe that kidded, I noticed that she did the same thing. Hers didn't last as long, but it just resolved on its own. And so is that just a normal thing? I think last year I gave everybody a little too much molasses water and we had like massive diarrhea right after kidding because of that. So this year I cut that in about half and just gave them a little bit and then moved on. And nobody had diarrhea this year.
And they don't need molasses. I know that's like a Facebook thing. They don't need it.
Yeah, the next one's not getting it because this year they just haven't seemed like they needed it. I just thought I'd throw that out there in case somebody has like a red flag to wave about that or just whatever. That's normal. They're healthy.
Yeah. So like nobody's actually ever researched that. But what you said, I've seen that. And so my thought kind of is like, that's one of those early warning symptoms, because like there is the periparturient egg rise and worms coming out of hibernation and stuff after a doe kids and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of feel like that might be one of the earliest symptoms that like you see the poops. And that's why I said I'd be checking their eyelids like every other day.
They're both good. I was just puzzled, like what's going on here? I'm not reading this in any book.
It's because researchers are like kind of several steps behind what people are doing. I don't know if that's something that's ever going to actually get officially researched, but yeah, I've seen that usually that like a goat's poop will start to stick together, and sometimes it does just go away within a week or two, and sometimes it gets wetter and wetter and wetter, and so it's not just like clumpy, it's like dog turds, and by then they're anemic and they're skinny.
I've got my whole herd on bioworma and they've been on it for about a year now. So I only have an acre out there, but they are all on bioworma.
I've been using it for a while.
I've been using it pretty much since it came out, and I've had really good luck with it. And I can tell you that when we could not get it, there was a period of time where it was just back order because they couldn't get the fungus. I had issues with barber pole worms. Where I'm at, we have real issues with barber pole worms here in my area in particular. I mean, y'all have the same climate, it's perfect conditions for rampant larval development out on your pastures. And, that was a little bit of a learning thing for me because, never put all your eggs in one basket. And I had some bucks that I knew were just very resilient. So they walked around with higher worm loads, which meant that they were putting out higher egg loads out on the pasture. But I was relying on biowarma because I'm like, oh, well, I can keep these boys around. I really like them. And I'm keeping the parasite loads off my pasture by using biowarma. Well, when biowarma went away, my egg loads really ramped up out on my pasture. And my goats that had a more normal resistance to the barber pole worms, the roundworms, started showing me that they couldn't handle that. So I ended up culling those boys that I knew were carrying high. And a resilient goat is a goat that can walk around with a high load of worms and not be impacted by them. The problem is they contaminate your pastures unless you're using something like biowarma. But anyway, the boys are over there on that bad side of the farm where we've been trying to get more growth so that we can start doing rotational grazing. We finally have gotten our pastures to the point where we can do that this year. So I'm hoping that once we can get a rotational grazing going, we can be done with the biowarma because it's expensive. It's very but it does work. That was sort of an experiment that Mother Nature and COVID, I guess, gave me because when I couldn't get the product anymore, I was able to really see, yeah, it really was working well because the goats were impacted when they went off of it.
That's awesome. That's really good to know, and I appreciate your feedback.